Shows George Coe is a judge sitting behind a judicial bench. Jan Hooks is a prosecutor. Bill Hartman is public defender Pete Dender. Chris Farley is a witness on the witness stand. And John Belushi is criminal defendant Elon Musk. Coe bangs the gavel.
Come to order. We are back on the record for the bench trial of State versus Musk. State, have you finished your direct examination of your witness?
Hooks.
Yes, Your Honor.
Coe.
Okay, defense, your witness.
Hartman.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr.
Farley.
Smear.
Pap smear. Hartman.
Right. So, Mr. Smear, you testified that you worked for Mr. Musk as a massage therapist, correct?
Farley.
That is correct.
Hartman.
Okay, and you testified that Mr. Musk exposed himself to you, correct?
Farley. Correct. Hartman.
And he did that by removing his clothes?
Farley. Yes. Hartman.
And of course, as part of the massage, you asked him to remove his clothes, correct?
Farley.
Well, yeah.
Hartman.
Okay, so he exposed himself at your direction to do so.
Farley. Well, yeah, but still inappropriate. Hartman.
And this happened in 2016?
Farley. Yeah. Hartman.
And you waited to get your panties in a bunch about it until 2022, correct?
Hooks.
Objection, Your Honor.
Coe.
What's the objection?
Hooks.
My client doesn't wear underpants.
Farley. I'm a free baller. Coe.
Overruled. Go ahead, Mr. Dender.
Hartman.
Thank you. Now, since you left the employ of Mr. Musk as a massage therapist, you worked in domestic intelligence, correct?
Farley looks at Hooks. Hooks.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevancy.
Hartman.
Your Honor, I'm trying to establish a motive for Mr. Smear to make false allegations against my client.
Hooks.
Your Honor, as I argued in my motion in limine that you stayed a ruling on until it became relevant, Mr. Smear's involvement with domestic intelligence is a matter of national security, and the details of which cannot be put on public record.
Coe.
Sustained on grounds of national security.
Hartman.
Now, Mr. Pap Smear, you've heard of cancel culture, is that right?
Farley. Well, I've heard of the phrase, but I don't think it's an actual thing. Hartman.
And what do you mean by that?
Farley. Well, cancel culture has a negative implication. I believe that culture has decided rightly to stand up against hate. Hartman.
Including hate against former President Trump.
Hooks.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Coe.
Sustained.
Hartman.
You're familiar with Twitter, right, Mr. Smear?
Farley. Yeah. Hartman.
And you're aware that what some would call cancel culture and what you call, quote, standing up against hate is very often a battle that wages on Twitter, correct?
Farley. I don't understand the question. Hartman.
Well, for example, if I were to call Conan O'Brien a nappy-headed hoe, it would be likely that, quote, people on Twitter would start tweeting about how abhorrent they found it, correct?
Farley. Well, I hope that they would. Hartman.
Exactly. And you'd also hope that they would seek to have me banned from Twitter for saying such a thing, correct?
Farley. Of course. Hartman.
And why is that?
Farley. Because I'm a liberal. Hartman.
And because you're a liberal, you have to eliminate anyone who says anything offensive about people or claims liberals approve of, even the likes of Conan O'Brien.
Farley. Of course. Hartman.
Okay. And you've heard that my client has made an offer to buy Twitter, correct?
Farley. Yeah. Hartman.
And you're aware that during the Arab Spring, that Twitter was utilized by the United States military and intelligence services.
Hooks.
Objection, Your Honor. We can't get too real for matters of national security.
Coe.
Sustained.
Hartman.
And Mr. Smear, you're aware that my client, Mr. Musk, is seeking to make a deal to buy Twitter contingent on the app not being a bit of a sham that is mostly bots and not actual people, correct? Hooks. Objection, Your Honor, relevance. Whether Twitter is filled with bots or not has nothing to do with whether the defendant sexually assaulted my client. Hartman. Your Honor, I'm merely trying to show that this trial against my client is a sham that's being waged because he's on the verge of exposing the fact that the powers that be have purposely sought to exaggerate how many people actually agree and sympathize with cancel culture by making it appear that there are millions of people on Twitter who agree with them, when really most normal people don't give a fuck, and that the majority of these supposed cancel culture warriors on Twitter are actually robots. Go! God, I hate public defenders. And live from Tom's phone, we're not alive. It's Saturday Night Live, starring an ever-evolving cast that is unionized and refuses to allow their names to be mentioned until their demands are met. Musical guest, Vangelis, and your host, John Marshall. Ladies and gentlemen, John Marshall.
Applause, applause, applause. Marshall.
Thank you, thank you. I'm happy to be here hosting this program. I, of course, was the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States.
Applause, applause, applause.
The producer of this program went to a law school that was named in my honor. But since I own slaves, it no longer is. I admit it was, of course, hypocritical for me to own slaves, as I spent my life believing that slavery was evil and that the South's reliance on it would ultimately fracture the Union. And so for my transgressions, I do sincerely apologize for not valuing the right to freedom that my slaves were entitled to.
Bernie Mac comes out and starts playing with Marshall's hair. Marshall.
I believe that the seminal case on which my legacy rests is Marbury versus Madison, where I upheld the principle of judicial review, whereby courts could strike down federal and state laws if they conflicted with the Constitution.
Mac.
Hey, Johnny, no more talking. You got some cotton to pick, motherfucker.
Marshall.
Yes. As penance for my transgressions, I am working for Mr. Mac free of charge. So if you'll excuse me, I do have some work to do. But we do have a great show tonight. Vangelis is here. So get ready to ride chariots of fire as we listen to the conquest of paradise. We'll be right back.